As we look at the life of Jesus and as we look at the things that he taught and the things that he laid out for us ahead, one of the words that keeps going through my mind over and over and over again is that he was completely unexpected in the things that he did and the things that he said and the things that he asked people to do. As we read through the stories of the things that he did, it was obvious that people were completely caught off guard over and over and over again. And it was obvious in the things that he taught that people were completely caught off guard. Now, typically the ones that we saw caught off guard the most were the people who would be us in that setting, the people who spent their time in the temple, the people who spent their time digging into the scriptures. Those were the people who seemed the most caught off guard. But even the people around him were completely caught off guard. When he came along and he decided to heal somebody, it was a completely unexpected thing that he did. Now, what caught people like us off guard when he went and he healed that person was that he healed a sinner. He didn't heal a good person. He healed the person that was looked down on. He healed the leper. He healed the person who couldn't walk. That was obviously, it was their fault because they hadn't been able to walk since they were born. So either them or their parents sinned, and that's why they were in that situation. He caught people like us off guard because he spent time with people who had bad reputations. You know, people like us were taught that when you come to, believe in God and to follow God, that means you get rid of all of those relationships with people who don't follow him because they might pull you away from him and they might cause you to have some bad habits. But Jesus comes along and all of a sudden, he starts spending time with these people to the point that it actually began to hurt his reputation because he was started to be called a glutton, which truthfully in the church, that one doesn't hurt us anymore. We're all for embracing gluttony. I know, I just said that out loud. I'll let that one settle in just a little bit. But he was also called a drunkard because he hung out with people who drank. And the argument could very well be made that he might have had a little bit to drink himself. Now, he wasn't going around celebrating it, and he wasn't going around showing off what he was drinking or all those types of things. But he did turn water into wine, did he not? I'm here to, we could go off on this. We're not going to. I would say it probably wasn't just really good grape juice. It was probably wine. And so he began to get this unexpected, people were looking at him and they're going, no, you're not doing things the way that you're supposed to do things. And so we've come along 2,000 years later-ish, and we are still, when we dig into his word and when we dig into the gospel accounts, completely caught off guard when we begin to see the things that he said and the things that he did. Because they go completely against the things that we would expect somebody to say. And so I want to, if you're okay with it, and you can tell me afterwards if you're not, and maybe this will be the last time we talk about this, probably not, but it might be the last time that we talk about this. But I want to spend some time over the next several weeks just digging into some of those completely unexpected things that Jesus said and that Jesus did. I really tried, and I'm still working on her, but I really tried to get Courtney to come out here this morning and just do a completely unexpected song that nobody would think that they were walking into a Sunday morning and they would begin to hear. It wasn't inappropriate or anything like that. I couldn't talk her into it, so I'm still working on it. So I need you all to help me to really push her like, hey, I don't know what song it is that Justin's trying to get you to do, but we want to hear it. Like, we want to be surprised when we come in here. I think many times Sunday mornings get to this point, and this isn't just here at Monroe City Church of God. This is in churches across the nation and across the world. We get to the point that Sunday morning is this comfortable experience that we have where we know what's going to happen. I mean, we kind of push against it a little bit here, but you can still be fairly confident that we're going to do 3 to 4 songs, and then I'm going to speak to you for a while, and then we're going to do another song at the end. It can get comfortable. It can get expected. That's why we try to switch it up on you every now and then. And sometimes we do things that you might walk in and you might be like, I didn't like that. I thought that was really dumb. I was reading a quote from a guy named John Acuff just this morning where he was talking with his daughter, and his daughter looked at him and said, Dad, I'm kind of glad that sometimes we go to church and we sing songs that I don't like. And he looked at her and he said, well, why does that make you glad? Why do you like singing songs that you don't like? And she said, because that means we must be reaching some people who aren't just like me. So as we do some things that are unexpected, I'm not saying every idea we do is good, but as we do some things that are unexpected and you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, this is really dumb. Stop for a second and ask, is there somebody in this room who isn't like me, who that one really touched them? And that thing that we did was really valuable to them. Because I don't know about you, I don't think that I'm a bad person or a miserable person to be around, but I don't want to just be around people like me. And a lot of you are sitting there, you're going, I wouldn't want to be around a bunch of people that are just like you either, Justin. So I get that. But unexpected things are part of what it means to walk with Jesus. That we should constantly, I believe, expect the unexpected. So I want us to spend some time looking at some of the things he did and some of the things he said. And I want this morning to actually start by looking at an account that we read in Luke chapter 5. If you have your Bibles with you, if you have your Bible app with you and you want to pull this out, we're going to start in Luke chapter 5, right in the beginning in verse 1, where we're going to read the story that many of us have heard over and over and over again. It's when Jesus comes along and he calls, we call it the calling of the first disciples. When he calls Peter and he calls James and he calls John. We're going to read through the account of what happened in that. But I want us to look at it through a lens of not just hey, I've read this story before, these 11 verses, I've read these before. There's nothing in here that I can take out of this that I haven't already taken out of this. We can quickly get to the point when we read through Scripture that it's just okay, I know I'm supposed to read every day, or I'm supposed to read, whatever it is, and I'm just going to read it. I sped through it, I put it down, I'm done, and we completely miss what's in there. So I want you to take just a moment as we get ready to read this and just ask God to open up your eyes to something that you weren't expecting to see in it. Can you do that this morning before we start in? I'm going to give you just a few moments to do that on your own. That way you can use whatever words you want. In Luke chapter 5, in verse 1, we read this account. It says, one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, who we'll read was later renamed to Peter, and asked him to put out a little from shore, and then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch. And Simon answers him, because as you read through the gospel accounts, you see that Simon is that guy who's not afraid to say, but wait a second. Think this through. We've already done this. Jesus, come on. So Simon looks at him, starts right off the bat, Master, we worked hard all night and we haven't caught anything. Jesus, who is not a fisherman, is looking at a master fisherman, looking at somebody who does this for a living and saying, hey, why don't you try one more time? To which that guy looks at him and says, we've already given it a shot. It hasn't worked. But because you say so, we'll try one more time. We'll give it one more shot. We'll push out. We'll do this one more time. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. And when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and says, go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken, and so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. And then Jesus said to Simon, take this fish that you have caught, go and sell it, and then come join me with all of the money that you have. Come jump on board, that way we can get a good financial start to what we're setting out on. That's what we would expect somebody to say. as they're getting ready to call people to come follow them, like, hey, you just had a financial windfall. Bring that along, and we're going to get something going here. Like, we're going to start our business. We're going to start our ministry. We're going to start this thing off on the right foot. But Jesus, being the unexpected Jesus that he is, the unexpected Son of God that he is, actually said to him, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up on the shore, and they left everything behind. They left everything and followed him. Now, it's easy to read through that story and be like, wow, they caught a bunch of fish, and then they took off. And some have made the argument that they caught a bunch of fish, they went in and they paid off all their debts. You know, they got rid of the Roman tax that was over their heads, but at least as I read through this, what I see it saying is they left it all on the shore. Now, to put that into perspective just a little bit, like this isn't just you went out into your backyard pond and you had a really good day fishing. This is you went out and you caught about half of a year's wages and you left it on the shore. People who have researched some of these things say that the estimated for today's cost in today's world, they estimate that they left about $30,000 worth of fish and went and followed Jesus, leaving all of it behind. Now, the average, according to the census in 2020, which I realize is 2 years old at this point, the median American income is $67,604 per year, something like that. So they left on the shore about almost half a year's wages for the median American income. Now, for some, we'll say 30,000 isn't quite as much. Take whatever it is that you make in half a year, and would you be willing to leave it all behind? Not, I'm going to securely put it in a bank so that when I'm done, I can come back to it. Not, I'm going to give it all to my kids so that they can do something with it. Not, I'm going to donate it over here. I'm going to leave it. What would it take to get you to do something like that? Something so insane and crazy as I'm going to leave. Imagine you went to the bank, you got one of those nice bricks of money, you took it out to the corner, you put it on the corner, and you walked away. I don't know who's going to come along and pick that. My guess is that somebody came along and took their $30,000 worth of fish. My guess is that it didn't just all go bad on the shore. Somebody else banked on their $30,000 worth of fish because they made the decision to leave everything behind and follow Jesus. Jesus, I've heard it said, and I've actually made the statement myself too because I think it's so accurate. Jesus was a horrible businessman. If you look at the things that Jesus taught, they are some of the worst financial decisions and the worst financial advice that anybody involved in church growth or business growth could use, in our opinion, in today's world. And we're going to look at some of those over the course of the next several weeks. But this is one of those. He had an amazing opportunity to have some incredible purse in the coin in the purse, that's the way that one's supposed to go, and start things off. And instead he says, hey, from now on, I've got a different job for you. So let's forget about all that. Let's leave that. Follow me. And they jump in. Now, some people would read this and be like, okay, that's not so bad because these guys are uneducated fishermen. They don't make a whole lot of money. They're probably behind on their taxes. They're behind on their income. That's not, okay, they left behind a lot of money, but it's not like they left behind this cush life to follow him. Well, let's go down a little bit further in Luke chapter 5 and look at when he calls somebody else to follow him and what his interaction is with that person. In verse 27, he comes up to a man named Matthew and it says, after this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi, whose name was also Matthew, at his tax booth. Follow me, Jesus said to him. And Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Now, let's be real about this story. Levi was a tax collector, and even back then, people didn't like tax collectors. Even back then, people weren't celebrating hiring 87,000 new tax agents. They didn't like them. They were, in the Jewish world, they were considered some of the scum of the earth. Because Matthew would have been a Jew who was working for the Romans and therefore cheating the Jews. He was doing everything he could to make sure that the Romans had what they needed to be nice and comfortable, to where the Romans would have the money that they needed, and anything extra that he wanted to take, well, he could just go ahead and tack that onto the bill, because they weren't filing their forms anyway, and so they didn't really know how much they owed. He just kind of got to sit there and do some numbers and say, okay, this is how much you owe. So he left behind a line of work and a livelihood that wasn't exactly loved by other people. But the thing is, when he left, he still wasn't really loved by other people. In fact, I love the way that the Chosen TV show kind of portrays the relationship between Peter and Matthew, because we read through the story and we think, well, they were two of the 12 disciples. Obviously, they got along with each other and they loved each other because they followed Jesus. Well, I would put it this way. If it means that we always get along and we always love each other as a definition of a Jesus follower, then we're not very good Jesus followers. Because a lot of us have to admit that there are moments where we don't love each other very well and we don't get along. My best bet is Matthew and Peter had a little bit of this going on, because Peter may have very well been cheated by Matthew. So, okay, he left behind a life that wasn't exactly a life of, people loved him and put him on a pedestal or anything, but he left behind a life of political protection. The Romans were going to make sure that Matthew didn't get messed with. And in the process, Matthew had a pretty comfortable life as far as finances, as far as material possessions. He lived pretty good. Now, he did it off of the backs of his own people, but he lived pretty good. And then Jesus comes along, and instead of Jesus sitting there and walking through with him all of the problems with the Roman system and all of the things that the government needs to change, and we're gonna go out here and we're gonna make a change in government like we would expect somebody in his position to do, he simply looked at Matthew and he said, "Follow me. We're not going to sit down and talk about all the problems with the Roman government. Just follow me. We're not going to sit here and complain about the taxes being too high and them using Jewish money for things that Jewish people don't agree with. Just follow me." And Matthew, it was apparently enough for him to say, "Okay." And he left everything to follow him. Again, it would have made a lot more sense for Jesus to say, "Hey, follow me and bring along all of the money that you have already, because that will give us a great start to the beginning of our ministry. So bring all that stuff along." Instead, it says Matthew left everything behind. So something in the message of Jesus that he was putting out there said, don't go back and grab all of your comforts and then follow me. In fact, at one point, Jesus looked at his followers, and this was a little bit later on, but in Matthew chapter 16, if you're writing these down or you want to follow along in your Bibles, in Matthew 16 and verse 24, Jesus actually says this about what it means to follow him. He says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet lose or forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?" If you want to follow me, Jesus says, you need to deny yourselves. All of these comforts that you're seeking and these things that you say are absolutely necessary to live a life that can blend in with everyone else, a life that other people will look at and respect, all those things. Like, no, if you want to follow me, you deny yourself. And you pick up your cross. Now, we speed through that verse real fast because for us, that's a cross, and that's a cross, and that's a cross, and maybe it's a tattoo for you, maybe it's something you wear around your neck. For them, a cross was something that you hung somebody on and brutally murdered them. It wasn't a status symbol. It wasn't a source of peace at the moment that he said this. Now, later on, some of them would look back and they would recognize, like, oh, when he said to take up your cross, he was talking about what he did on a cross. But here's the thing about what he did on a cross. He didn't want to do it. It wasn't comfortable for him. In fact, before he went to it, he sweated blood because he was so anxious about it. Because that's how much he wanted to go to a cross for other people. He was willing, but he didn't want it. It was torture. Even for him, it was torture. And so he's looking at people and he's saying, looking at us, and he's saying, if you want to follow me, you must deny yourselves and pick up your cross. I don't know about you, but that's not the message I usually hear people say when they're wanting me to follow them in today's world. When I get all of those requests on social media to follow somebody, I don't typically have a description in there of, hey, follow me by denying all of your comforts and picking up a torture symbol and come on after me. Like, follow me, I'm going to guarantee you it's not going to be easy. Follow me, when our presidents come along and they're running, they're not sitting there saying, hey, elect me to president, because if you elect me to president, some things in your life are going to be harder. Has anyone ever heard a presidential candidate say that? I mean, I really only started paying attention to the debates 12 years ago, something like that. So I ignored presidents for a long time. I learned about them, but let's be real, I was a kid, I just ignored them. But no one's ever heard that. I'm looking for any confirmations. No. But Jesus comes along. Now, we know looking back that his message is not your life is going to be miserable. But he is being honest with us. If you want to follow me, you're going to have to take these things that you think are the most important things in the world and be ready to give those up. Later on, he makes a comment to his followers. He says, hey, foxes have dens, and I still can't remember what the other animal is, but another one has a hole. But the Son of Man, I don't have a pillow. I don't have a place to lay down and sleep. Now, 2,000 years later, we've come along and, we say that, well, God, I will follow you, but I need you to understand, I have to have a comfortable house. God, I'll follow you, but you don't understand. I have to be available at the drop of a hat for anything that my children need done. God, I will follow you, but you don't understand. Work will always come first. God, I'll follow you, but this project that I need to get done, it's going to take precedent to anything you want me to do. God, I'll follow you, but, and I'm not just throwing all of you under the bus. So I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for 14-ish years, like on staff at a church as a pastor. And I will say there have been moments in my life where I look back on them and I was like, man, God was calling me to follow him at that moment. And I looked at him and I said, but God first. Like I think of when I was in Casper, Wyoming, and I was on my way to the church for a morning that I really didn't, to the church building, I should say. I was on my way to the building where the people were going to gather, and I didn't have any major responsibilities on this Sunday morning. But on my way there, I saw somebody walking down the road that I had that sense of, that some of you may have experienced at some time of, hey, stop and help this person. But in my mind, what I said was, God, you don't understand. I'm on my way to where the people of God are gathering, and I need to be there so that I can do what? Stand at the door or, whatever? Like, that's an important thing to do, but God's saying, I need you to do this. I said, no, God, I'm already doing your work. I'm over here. I'm headed over here. I can't let those people down by stopping and doing what you're asking me to do. The irony of that hits me pretty hard. That many times we ignore God by blaming it on him that we're ignoring him. And what he's saying is, if you want to follow me, I need you to leave it all behind. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone in this room needs to sell their house, or actually, if we want to look at Luke chapter 5, that everyone in here needs to just vacate your homes and just leave them there, and we're all going to go live in whatever field we come across that day because we can't put up a bed in a field even because Jesus didn't have a field. Of course, that's not what it means. But my question to you this morning, and the question that I ask myself this morning is, are we willing to do something that outrageous? If it's what God is calling us to do. Are we willing to do something half that outrageous? If it's what we believe God is calling us to do? Or are we really saying, God, I will follow you. Jesus, I will walk with you as long as you fit into the preconceived plan that I already have put together. And for some of us, the easy trap is that we sit here and say, I already denied myself. I already gave my life to Jesus. I've already made the decision to follow him. Well, here's the catch on that one. When you read this same account in one of the other Gospels, in Luke chapter 9:23, Jesus actually says in here, and again, I realize that the Gospel accounts don't say the exact same words. It's just like when we can all sit in on the same conversation and we remember a little bit different words, it doesn't mean we changed the conversation. It means that we remembered a different part of it. And that's one of the beauties of there being 4 Gospel accounts is we don't have to rely on one person. But we have 4 of them that confirm the things that happened. In Luke chapter 9 and verse 23, he says to them, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily. I thought this was a one-time exchange, God. Like, I thought this was one of those things where I could click the follow button and then I could ignore all the stuff that you post, which is about 99% of the people that I have on social media. Partially because I don't spend that much time on social media. But I thought I could do that, God. You mean I have to do this every single day? Every day I have to deny myself and pick up my cross and follow you? Again, Jesus had a horrible plan for getting people to follow him. Except for that part where he could make a promise that nobody else could make. He could make the promise that when you choose to lose all of that stuff, when you choose to put me at the top of this instead of all those other things, that's when you're going to actually find out what life is all about. Now, it's a claim that you can only prove to be true by experiencing it. But for those who have been able to truly deny themselves and pick up their cross daily and walk with him, they've seen that they truly find life that blew away what they had before. And that's what Jesus is putting out there for them. Not that it's going to be easy by the world's standards, not that you're going to have all of the physical and creature comforts that are out there. There are people who I've heard concerned that, if I do this, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose who I am. But I love what I read recently. I don't remember who wrote it. But I love what I've read recently where he said, when you choose to follow Jesus, you don't lose your life. You loose your life to all that there truly is to it. You let loose what God has originally created you to be and what God has originally put in place for you. You let loose all of those chains that are there to pull you down. You let loose all of those pressures and stresses that you feel like you have to have, that I have to have all of this stuff in my life, and all of a sudden, all of this stuff begins to control my life. You get to let loose all of that and truly just live life. Even though it might have meant leaving $30,000 on the shore. You begin to realize that $30,000, it turns out, doesn't actually bring happiness. Typically what it brings is a desire for $30,000 more dollars. You can read the studies if you want to. You can go look those up of when they ask people, what does it take to be rich? And for the people who make $40,000 a year, they say, I'd be rich if I was making 60. And for the ones who are making 60, they say, I'd be rich if I was making 100. And the ones who are making 100, they say, I'd be rich if I was making 200,000. And the ones who are making billions of dollars a year are like, I still don't have enough money. Because it doesn't actually satisfy us in the way that we're told it will satisfy us. And it's not just about the money. We can go down so many different roads with this. If I just had one more job up on the pecking order, then I would be happy and I would be fulfilled. And then you get to that position and you just want to go one more job up on the pecking order. You could be the owner of the company and still they're sitting there going, but that company is better and higher rated than my company. So if I could just catch them, then I could be the absolute best and then I could be satisfied. I read the quotes from so many of the Fortune 500 CEOs or from so many of the billionaire owners. And one of the things that so many of them say is the way to get to the top is to never be satisfied. That sounds miserable. Am I the only one who reads that and says, you know what I want my quote and what I want my motto in life to be? Never be satisfied. That sounds fun. Sounds very satisfactory. To never be satisfied. Now, should we push ourselves? Absolutely. Am I saying that when you walk out of here, you should just be like, woo, I don't have a care in the world. I don't give a rip about anything. No. But what if the focus could be on something, on someone who says, I can really let your life loose in a way that you can step in to what will truly bring you satisfaction. And it may not be that you're on the top of the pole at work, and it may not be that you make the most money, and it may not be that your child is a superstar in sports, and it may not be that you're a superstar in sports. It may not be any of those things. But you can walk around living life, putting forth your best efforts, and being satisfied with the life that you have. Because your life is in step with me. Even today, almost 2,000 years later, it would still be unexpected if a man like Jesus came along and said, hey, I'm going to invite you to follow me, but I'm not going to promise you comforts. In fact, I'm going to promise you the opposite when it comes to creature comforts. I'm not going to promise you that stuff. I'm going to tell you that every day, I'm going to ask you to deny yourself and to pick up your cross. Because that's what I did. And I'm going to ask you to follow my example. I'm not going to ask you to bring everything. I'm going to ask you to leave everything. I think most of us would look there and say, no thanks. I've got a lot. Even those of us who don't feel like we have a lot, we've got a lot. I don't want to leave that behind. But Jesus said, deny yourselves, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Matthew got it. He gave up political protection. In fact, he probably ticked off the government when he stepped out of it. The Romans most likely didn't sit there and be like, oh, that's cool. You can step away from the post that you're in. No big deal. Peter, James, and John, they got it. They stepped away from their livelihood because Jesus said, I've got something bigger for you. They stepped away from half of a year's wages because Jesus said, I've got something bigger for you. I don't know what it is that he might call you to step away from or is asking you to step away from. But it's going to be your decision. It's going to be my decision for me. Am I going to be willing to step away from it? It might be your house. It might be your job. It might be South Knox. It might be Knox County. It might be Indiana. He might call you across the world. I don't know what he's going to do. It might feel like, other people might look at it and be like, wow, that seems really small. But to you, it's a big deal that he's saying, I need you to leave that behind and follow me because you are taking that and putting it above me. I need you to leave that behind. I don't want you to bring it with you so that I can have it. I want you to leave it behind. And it's going to be your decision. Am I going to be willing to do that? And the question good morning. The question that it comes down to, or the decision that it comes down to is, do I want to step into his promise that he's actually here to give me a life to the fullest? That he's actually here to help me let loose, to help me lead a life where I can be satisfied, a life where I can feel full. The choice is yours. My bet, because there's as many people in here as there are, is that there are people in here this morning who God is saying, hey, I need you to leave this behind. And you're saying, but God, you don't understand how long I worked for this. But God, you don't understand how many people tell me this is important. But God. And so I don't have an action step for you to take out of this building and go out and, share all this with somebody else or something like that. But I have an invitation for you this morning to truly spend a moment and say, God, what is it that you are asking me to let go of that I am refusing to let go of? Or if you already know what it is, pull somebody else in and say, hey, I know that I'm supposed to be letting go of this, but I need some help. That's that together part of all of this. That's that part where he says, don't stop meeting together so that you can do this together so that it's not just your own willpower. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Must take up their cross daily and follow me. God, we thank you for not just throwing this on us and saying good luck. God, we know what a cross is, not because we read history books, although yes, that might be some people know because of that, but most people know what a cross is because you went to one for us. That you endured the torture of a cross for us. That you set the example for us. That you didn't say, come follow me and do a bunch of things that I'm not willing to do. You said, follow me and do what I've already done. Walk with me and do the things that I've set the example for. Do the things that I'm going to explain to you as you walk. God, I can think of the things, some of them, in my life that I know you're telling me, hey, I need you to let these go. God, I pray you would give me strength, and I pray that you would give me strength to bring others in on that with me. So that I wouldn't just be standing up here inviting others to do something that I haven't done. God, I believe that people are in here this morning because they want to walk with you. Or at the very least, they want to figure out what that even means to walk with you. God, I pray that you would show us. I pray that we would be willing to open our eyes. That we would be willing to see what it is that you're putting in front of us. And when I say we, I'm including me. God, help us to deny ourselves as you did, to pick up our cross daily, to pick it up like you did, and to follow you and to walk with you. Help us to embrace the unexpected things that you said and that you say each and every day.